Coming up in this episode, we're going to look at Honda's new Hornet and the state of play on that bike worldwide as to where it's available, where you can pre-order it right now and where you can't. We'll then take a look at a couple of bikes that have been taking my fancy, a couple of cruisers, two bikes that I could see myself owning. After that, we're going to head back to my NC750X for a bit of a handlebar update and some feedback on the risers I purchased. We're then going to cover the topic of the best beginner bike. That's a question I get asked a lot, and I'm going to share my thoughts on that. I'm also going to show you my Do I Fit playlist, which is a playlist of all the bikes I've covered so far, and I think there's 255 videos currently on that playlist. And I'll also share what really bugs me about YouTube playlists. And finally, we're going to touch on Triumph's imminent announcement of their new chromed out models. If this sounds of interest to you, stick around. Okay, let's start with Honda's Hornet, or the CB750 as it's to be known, and in particular where it's been sold or where it's available right now in the world. And I've gone through a few of the websites. I've looked at Honda UK, Honda USA, Honda Germany and Honda Switzerland to get a bit of a feel for the European market, Honda Australia, Honda New Zealand and Honda Canada. Now in the UK, Honda UK has the CB750 front and centre on the website, and you can pre-order that model right now. And I have heard from commenters in the comment section that they're expecting to see that bike delivered in December. So UK viewers are certainly very lucky. Now Honda Germany also shows the bike on the website, and Honda Switzerland also shows the bike available for pre-order. So you can order the pre-order. It looks like it's pretty much most places in Germany you can order the new Honda Hornet CB750 right now or pre-order it. Now, for the countries that don't have any mention of the Honda CB750 anywhere on their websites, Australia, I sort of expected that. No mention of when we will ever see it here. I'm hoping it's coming here, but there's no mention. New Zealand also has no mention of it. Canada has no mention of the bike, and the USA also has no mention of the bike. So it looks like it's going to be rolled out first in the UK and Europe, and hopefully the other markets will follow on. When that will be, we'll have to wait and see. But one thing I did notice that was of interest was the CB1000R is no longer available here in Australia, and yet it's available in New Zealand. So that sort of surprised me. And it's also available in Canada. Yeah, it's a bike I wish we still had sold here. Like, I really enjoyed my test ride of the CB1000R, and there is a video on my channel of that test ride. But yeah, it's just interesting that New Zealand and Canada, I think it's available in the USA, it's definitely available in the UK. Why Australia is not getting that bike anymore. We used to sell it, but we just don't get that one anymore. So that's a little bit bewildering to me. But anyway, back on the topic of the Honda Hornet, we'll just have to wait and see as to when we're going to get that here in Australia. And obviously Canada, USA, New Zealand, you're going to be in the same boat as we are. So fingers crossed it's not going to be too far away. Now, two bikes that have been taking my fancy this week, you know how you get, you just sort of, you go from week to week, or well, at least I do. I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes you're in the mood for a cruiser, sometimes you're in the mood for a sport bike, sometimes you're in the mood for a naked bike. Well, at the moment I'm into cruisers, and the two bikes that I've sort of whittled down to the two bikes that I would buy if I was buying a cruiser right now, and that would be the Indian Super Chief Limited or the Harley Heritage Classic. Now, they're the two bikes that, after looking around, they're the two bikes that most appeal to me today. Now, in Australia, the Indian Super Chief Limited sells for 30,995 Australian dollars, and the Heritage Classic sells for 36,995 dollars. So the Harley Heritage Classic is $6,000 Australian more expensive than the Indian Super Chief Limited at the moment. And I suppose the question that you need to ask is it $6,000 better in value? And so I've been watching quite a few videos on YouTube on both those bikes, and the takeaway seems to be, now on an appearance side or looks wise, I like both bikes, but I like both bikes for different reasons. The Super Chief Limited really appeals to me because it's sort of like a stripped back raw cruiser that could do touring work as well, to a degree. It's not a touring bike, but but you could certainly do some touring on it. Whereas the Harley Heritage Classic is more of a refined, more established looking model. And both bikes do appeal to me visually. If I had to go on looks alone though, I would say there's something about the rawness of the Super Chief Limited that's really appealing to me. And I think looks-wise, for me personally, I would give the nod to the Super Chief Limited. But having said that, I could quite easily own the Heritage Classic looks-wise. Now, when it comes to other features, from what I'm seeing in the reviews, is that the Harley may be a little bit nicer riding bike, more compliant in the suspension, and just seems to, from the feedback, change direction a little easier in the turns and in the bends. And I think that's backed up by the longer travel suspension on the rear of the Harley, whereas the Super Chief Limited has, I think, 3 inches of rear travel. So suspension-wise, I'd have to give the win to the Harley. And the other thing that appeals to me about the Heritage Classic over the Super Chief Limited is the panniers, or the luggage. I like the fact that you can lock the bags on the Heritage Classic and you can't lock the bags on the Super Chief Limited. And also, I think, from what I can see, the Harley may have a little bit more room in the bags than what the Super Chief Limited does, because the Super Chief Limited looks like it's a pretty large bag, but it tapers up at the top, and when you open the bag up, you can see there's sort of pieces sort of pressing into the space of the bag. So, and I did see some feedback that one of the riders found the storage capacity of the Super Chief Limited to be a little bit limited, no pun intended. Other notable features of these two bikes is that the wet weight of both the bikes is pretty much identical, very similar. The Super Chief Limited comes in at 335 kilograms wet, ready to ride, and the Heritage Classic comes in at 330 kilograms wet, ready to ride. Another win to the Heritage Classic though is the fuel tank. 18.9 litres on the Heritage Classic versus 15.1 litres on the Super Chief Limited. So if I had to put my money down, or I was in a position to buy one this week, and you know, if I was in a position, I tell you, I'd be very sorely tempted to go out and buy one of these bikes. I'm sort of a bit torn because I like the looks of the Super Chief Limited, and I think, you know, I think the Harley Heritage Classic would be a nicer riding bike, but I think the Super Chief Limited would be good enough for what I need. But I really like the fact that the Harley has a larger fuel tank. I like the fact that the Harley has lockable bags, and I like the idea of more comfortable, more compliant suspension. So even though it's $6,000 Australian dearer, this week I would buy the Heritage Classic over the Super Chief Limited. Okay, now on to my NC750X. Now, I purchased some risers for the NC750X because I just couldn't find a comfortable riding position. I thought maybe if the bars are a little bit higher and a little bit closer to me, it might be more comfortable. But once I put the risers on, I actually tried 2 positions, one with the risers coming up and towards me, and one with the risers coming up and away from me. And, you know, I felt it was better, but still not ideal. And so I rode around testing, you know, towards me, away from me. And there was compromises, like turning the handlebars with the risers on away from me. The handlebars would hit the screen. I didn't have full range of motion, full lock, which was a bit frustrating. And then towards me, it was fine, but I had to, because of the lift in the risers, the height, my cables were a little bit short, and so I had to move my controls in on the handlebars to give me some slack in the cables. So after a little bit of testing away from me and closer to me, I actually took the risers off altogether and went back to the standard handlebar position with the standard risers. And I thought I'll just try that again just to see how it compares. And still wasn't ideal until I was out on a ride just recently and I went over this massive pothole which shook the whole bike, which I didn't see coming, and it just really hit the bike hard. Fortunately, didn't do any damage to my tyre or rim, which is what I was most worried about. But as I was riding along afterwards and just looking at my mirrors, I noticed that my mirrors were adjusted facing down, and I thought, wow, that was a a pretty big hit to swing the mirrors around. And then I thought about it more, that both were looking down equally. And then I realized that my handlebars had actually moved in the triple clamps from the force of the bump. Now, I had the bolts done up to a point where they were firm, but because I was changing around a lot, I didn't sort of really crank on them to tighten them up super tight. And so when I hit that bump, obviously I put a fair bit of weight on the handlebars and just pushed the handlebars down to a new position. Now, the amazing thing is that new position is very comfortable. So I haven't changed the position of those handlebars since that bump, and I've just nipped them up so they're super tight now. And I'm just going to ride around for a while in this new position. And I must say, I'm finding them very comfortable, and I'm going to leave them in this position for a little while now. And the position is pretty well where the handlebars are in line with the forks, with the step up and the handlebars are in line with the forks when you look at it from the side. And maybe it might be pulled a little bit closer to me. But anyway, whatever the position is, it's perfect for me right now. So I'm just going to leave that. But I will give it a good test and do a 2-hour ride and give you some feedback once I know where I'm at. Now, on to the topic of the best beginner bike. This is a question I get asked so much in the comments. Like, what's the best beginner bike for me? I'm 6'2". What's the best beginner bike? I'm 5'3". What's the best beginner bike? Etc. etc. And I do get a bit frustrated when I see guys on YouTube recommending bikes to potential beginners. Like I saw a guy test riding a Indian Scout, and he said, this will be completely fine for beginners. And I thought, wow. What sort of beginner are we talking about? And this is the big crux of the problem, and why I'm making this video. The problem is beginners range from a 55-year-old person who has never ridden a motorcycle in their life and is super nervous, to say a 18, 19-year-old young guy or girl who's grown up riding motorbikes on the farm, or riding dirt bikes or whatever. Both are beginners on the road. Both are going for their motorcycle license, but both have completely different experiences and life experiences. Now, the problem is, as humans, and we all do it, I do it, you tend to look at things framed from your personal own life experience. And it's a natural thing to do. We just assume that, what we experienced growing up and in life is what everyone has experienced. And I do find that a lot of the reviewers fall into the trap of, I'll see a reviewer who's riding 3 different bikes a week or 2 different bikes a week, testing it, and they're giving their opinion of whether a bike is suitable for a beginner based on their life experience. Just they do it subconsciously. They don't realize that they're making that decision, or that opinion, or forming that opinion from a point of view of a very experienced rider. So a very experienced rider is going to jump onto an Indian Scout, for instance, and think, yeah, this is easy. This is super easy to ride. Like, I found it very easy to ride. But then you have to think about, okay, that's because I've been riding bikes since I was 25. I'm now 60. And have owned all sorts of bikes, from cruisers to sports bikes to trail bikes to adventure bikes, everything. I've owned it. So I'm coming to forming an opinion based on a lot of experience. And so, yeah, it's going to seem easy to me. But imagine you're 55, never ridden a motorcycle in your life, super nervous, and someone says to you, here you go, Indian Scout, hop on it, easy to ride, go for it. They're going to find it very intimidating. They're going to find it difficult. They're going to find it scary, and they're going to think, if this is motorcycling, I want no bar of it. And I've seen it time and time again. The beginner buys the wrong bike. They get nervous. They feel uncomfortable every time they ride it, and they end up not riding it. And then they decide motorcycling's not for me. And at the end of the day, it may not be. But I feel that they weren't given a good proper chance, because they got bad advice, basically. So whenever someone asks me which is the best beginner bike, this is one simple thing that I would recommend everyone take on board, especially if you're a beginner. That is, buy the bike that least intimidates you. So, you know, if you're a bit unsure and you look at a bike and you think, well, there's a CB500, for instance, which is, I would feel, is a very easy bike to ride. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story about that bike in a minute. There's a CB500 or there's a CB125. Now I'm just choosing Hondas, but it could be any brand. If you look at the 125 and think, yeah, I could ride that easy, and you look at the CB500F and you think, yeah, I could ride that, but yeah, I'm a bit nervous about that, go for the CB125. You know, get your experience, get comfortable on the road. Part of the journey of learning to ride a motorcycle is learning to mix in traffic, learning to be comfortable on the highway, learning, you know, all these different things on top of learning how to control the motorcycle. So, which is why I recommend just buy the least intimidating bike you can buy, because your first bike is not going to be the bike you have forever. It's just a bike to learn on. Now, having said that, there will be riders out there who will jump on a bike and be instantly comfortable and, you know, may be able to have an Indian Scout as their first motorcycle. There will be riders out there. You'll know if that's you. You'll say, yeah, I can do this, I can handle it, I'm going to go for it. To those guys, I say, go for it, try it out and see how it goes. But if you do start to feel like it's a bit intimidating to ride, or you're uncomfortable riding it, or you know, you feel that maybe it might be a bit too much for you at the start, don't give up on motorcycling. Just think about perhaps buying something that's a bit easier to ride, develop your skills, develop your comfort levels on the bike, and then, you know, then pick your dream bike after that. Now, the little story about the CB500F I was going to tell you about was my wife decided she wanted to go for her motorcycle license a few years ago. Now, she'd been on the back of me on my bike for years, you know, on all the different bikes I've had, including my K1300S with 170 horsepower, and I could give that a handful and she was fine on the back. So when she decided she wanted to go for her motorcycle license, I thought, yeah, she'll be fine, no problems at all. So we went into the Honda dealership with the objective in mind to buy a Honda CB125, because I heard that the motorcycle rider training courses were using the CB125, and I thought, yeah, that's perfect for a first beginner bike to start on and to learn on. And when we got into the dealership, the salesman there, who I know well and is a friend of mine, talked us into buying the CB500F, thinking that it would be a bike that she could grow into. We bought the CB500F. I thought, well, yeah, it makes sense that she can grow into that bike, and she just was not comfortable on it. I think it was just a little bit too much of a reach to the ground for her. But to her credit, she tried and she gave it a good go. Everything was going all right. She was pretty nervous, but everything was going all right until she dropped it the first time. And what happened was she went to pull up on the side of the road. The camber of the road fell away. The bike's upright. She goes to put her foot down and she can't reach the road. And she's reaching, and then bang, the bike went over and she just couldn't stop it. Thankfully, the Hondas are very cheap to repair. Like, it was a brake lever, might have been a grip, a bar end, and the gear lever was bent a little bit, which we straightened up. So thankfully, there was very little damage, and I was surprised at how cheap the parts were and how easy it was to fix, so that was really good. But that one drop really shook her confidence, and I don't believe that if she was on the CB125, she would have had that drop, because she would have been lower to the ground and she would have been able to put her feet down, and I think, you know, that was the start of the end, really. So anyway, we did some more training and more practicing, and she dropped the bike again. And so that then really shook her confidence. So we decided to get some professional training and do a stay upright course, and put her onto a CB125 and see how she goes. So she did a day course on the CB125, and she was still super nervous and super stiff, but we just kept pushing it, kept going. She wanted to keep going just to try and get through it. And then it came to the day of doing her license test, and we had a good talk about it first thing in the morning, and she had two options. She could do the license test on the CB125, or she could do her test on a scooter. They had the option of doing either or. And she still didn't feel confident enough to do the test on the CB125. And I said, well, what if you tried the scooter? You know, it's probably going to be easier to ride. Would that make you feel more comfortable? So she decided, yep, she's going to do it on the scooter. Now, you couldn't make this up. On the day of the test, the morning of the test, it started raining. And on the test, you have to do sort of like emergency braking and turning and things like that. The CB125 had ABS, the scooter didn't. And she'd done all her emergency braking on the bike with ABS, the CB125. And so she slammed the front brakes on, the scooter went over, landed on her leg, ruptured a vein or an artery, and she ended up in hospital because the leg just blew up straight away, just filled up with blood. And that was the end of the test. That was also the end of her going for her motorcycle license. She said, that's it, no more, never again. And I do wonder if you know, we had started off on the CB125, whether she'd be on a bike today, or maybe, you know, maybe she was just that sort of person that was just too nervous, and she was never, ever going to be comfortable on the bike. But the weird thing is she's comfortable on the back of the bike with me, so, you know, you just never know, you can't pick it. Anyway, that's my little story about my wife as a beginner trying to get her motorcycle license. So back to the topic of what's the best beginner bike? Well, you know, the best beginner bike and the safest advice I can give to you is, or pick a bike that you find least intimidating. Learn how to ride a bike, learn how to be comfortable on the road, learn how to control the motorcycle, learn how to be comfortable in traffic, and then once you'll know when you're comfortable and you've got this, then go for your next bike, a step up if you like, and just progress your way to your dream bike. Righto, now I just want to talk about my Do I Fit series videos. If you're not familiar with the Do I Fit series videos, there are a series of videos where I show riders from 5'3" to 6'4" on a motorcycle and show how you might potentially fit on that bike. Now currently in the series there's about 255 bikes I've covered, and I have created a Do I Fit playlist, which I'll put a link to in the description of this video. And in that playlist you'll see I've tried to sort the bikes alphabetically, and I've made them all available there where you can just go through and have a look. Now the frustrating thing about YouTube playlists, and I really hope that they fix this, there is no way for me to sort those bikes alphabetically. I can do newest video, oldest video, newer video, etc., but I can't sort them alphabetically. And so to position them alphabetically, I've had to go through and just manually drag a bike up into a location and then go back and find and drag it up alphabetically to its correct spot. And this takes hours and hours and hours, because once you get, if you've got about 30 videos, it's pretty quick and slick and easy. But at 255 videos, once you get past about 100 videos, the YouTube playlist just slows right down. So you drag it into position, and then you have to wait for it to update, and drag it a bit further, wait for it. It's just infuriating to try and organize that way. So hopefully YouTube can fix their playlist system where I can sort those videos alphabetically. It'll make everybody's life so much easier. Because if you use this search box at the top of the playlist, it just goes, say you search BMW 1250 RT, it just goes out onto YouTube in general and gives you listings for BMW R1250 RT. It doesn't search the playlist. And so I can't find a playlist search box, which seems crazy to me. Why can't I search the playlist? I can't organize the videos alphabetically, and I can't search the playlist. It just seems crazy. So what you're going to have to do, unfortunately, is just scroll through until you find the bike you're looking for. Now, like I said, I've tried to organize them alphabetically by dragging them into position, but there are still bikes that are out of position. So if you don't see it alphabetically, keep scrolling and it may be there. There are bikes I still need to add to the playlist, and I will keep updating it. And I will do new videos showing the inside leg measurement against the bike. So I think that's, you guys have told me that's a valuable tool, so we'll keep doing that. So there it is, the Do I Fit playlist. Go and check it out and see if the bike you're looking for is in that playlist. And now we're on to Triumph's recent announcement and imminent announcement on their new chromed out models. They haven't said much, they just used the word chrome, and so I'm assuming that they're going to do a range of chromed Triumphs. And it's understandable, because you look at Royal Enfield has some really nice bikes with chrome colour schemes. The new BSA has a chrome tank. Trying to think of other... Moto Guzzi had a bike at one point which had a chrome tank. Actually, a little story on that. A friend of mine bought that particular bike. I can't remember the model name, but the tank was actually plastic chromed, and he had issues with the chrome cracking off, and I think they ended up replacing the tank. But I think on the newer models of the Royal Enfield and the BSA, they're steel tanks, so you shouldn't have that issue. Personally, I really like the chromed out look, and if I was going to buy a Royal Enfield, I think I'd go, say, an Interceptor 650. I would go for the chromed tank option, and I'm not sure if the BSA is going to have options other than a chrome tank, but if there were, I'd still probably go for the chrome tank. I really like the look of it. I think it's pretty clever that Triumph are doing this with their chromed out announcement, and I'm looking forward to see what they do bring to the market chrome wise. They said the announcement's going to be on the 25th of October. I'm recording this on the 25th of October, and I've seen nothing yet, so it may be tonight, so it may be after this video goes out. But what I will do, once I've got all the information, I'll make a separate video on their chromed out models and just give you my feedback and what I think of them, and yeah, be interesting to see what they come up with. All right, we're at the end of the video. So if you've enjoyed this format, let me know in the comments below and I'll do more. This is episode 1. I'll do a few. I'm just going to call it the BIL Show, and yeah, see how it goes. I'm trying this format because, you know, I can do one video. I've got a lot of topics I want to cover in a week, and I just don't have time to make a separate video for each one. So this way I can just cover all the things I'm thinking about in 1 week, and then I'm going to just cut each little section into its own little video, and you'll see it just probably every day. A new little excerpt from this big video will appear every day on the channel. That way, if you miss something in this main video, you can just pick it up. I'm only interested in the beginner bike or the Honda Hornet, whatever, and just watch that video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.